hello to wherever you may be in the world. I know that we have people here from all over the United States and beyond. I know our special guest, who I'll be introducing shortly, is in Germany herself. But I'm Marianne Weiss, and I'm here to facilitate this program with one of my favorite yogis, favorite teachers, and probably now, after spending the weekend with her in a retreat, one of my favorite humans. So just a big, huge welcome. I've also had the pleasure of studying Raj Yoga for about 25 years, but I live in Miami, and I work for a nonprofit and organization there. But I'm so glad that I can be here today for this very special program with a very special soul, Denise Lawrence, who has been a pioneer in the world of meditation and spirituality for over 45 years. Denise Lawrence, who we affectionately refer to as Sister Denise, because she truly has been a sister to humanity, is here to talk to us about the upside of uncertainty and our next steps in this big topic. So a big welcome to Sister Denise, but before I hand it off to you to give us a little introduction on the topic, I just want to tell everyone a little bit about you. And I do have your bio, which I will read, but I also, I'm noticing that your bio doesn't say a couple of things that I think are huge, and I just sort of want to point those out. I think one of your biggest accomplishments that I can see is the boundless and unlimited service, Sister Denise, that you have done for our communities and for our world, just through your dedication to spiritually empowering people, and also with your commitment to transforming the world through your positive vibrations and positive thoughts and your frequencies. So I know that that's a huge amount of the service that you do, and everybody around you feels it for sure. So I do want to start off a little bit with your bio. So before we give the floor to you, a little bit about Sister Denise. Sister Denise has been a dedicated sister of the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University since 1974. Prior to this, she was working in TV news at BBC and Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. During the past 4 decades, she has served as coordinator in Europe, Canada, and USA, and director of Overseas Communications Center at the Brahma Kumaris headquarters at Mount Abu, India. She travels widely, conducting retreats, seminars, conferences, etc. The list goes on, right? She is an author, a broadcaster, an international speaker on Raj Yoga meditation, spirituality, and related subjects. And she is currently living in Munich. So we are here today to get a little introduction on this tremendous topic, uncertainty and our times. And we're going to start off by getting a little introduction from Sister Denise on the topic, and then we're going to come back and ask you some questions. So off to you. Very, very, very big, huge welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mariana. I just want to make sure that you can hear me okay? Voice
yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Well, you know, this question of uncertainty, we have in physics, we have the uncertainty principle. In day-to-day life, we say the only certainty is death and taxes, you know that one, right? And I think that we have an ambivalent relationship with certainty, because one of the concepts that we use in the study of Raj Yoga, which is the spiritual practice that I do, takes up the idea of predestination. And people many people, they feel, okay, if everything is predestined, then what's the point in making any effort or something like this? And if it's predestined, then why? And if it's predestined, then it's certain. And if something is certain, then, well, maybe we don't like it. When you, I don't know, there are many people, they watch football matches. And if they knew in advance what the outcome would be, would they watch it? Would there be anything like spectator sports? We need uncertainty, and we crave some sort of guarantees. And so this ambivalence in our relationship with certainty and uncertainty is just there in life. And I think that if we're talking about the upside of uncertainty, it implies that our relationship with uncertainty is we would prefer if there were certainty, and that uncertainty is something that is usually something down, the downside. But we have this ambivalent relationship. And what I would like to bring into the equation is the laws of spirituality. And they are very subtle and deep, and we do study them in the study and practice of Raj Yoga meditation at the Brahma Kumaris. And even if we say, okay, there is such a thing as destiny, but you don't know totally what that is. Take, for example, our relationship with climate change. Definitely there are signs of climate change, big signs. And I think the big question is not whether or not there is climate change, but who's responsible? Can we say that human beings are responsible for climate change? In which case, if we take control of human activity that is deemed to be affecting climate change, then we can stop climate change. But then there are other people who say what the human beings do isn't making that much difference to climate change, a little bit. So why is there climate change and what's going on? Then you have the people who are protesting climate change, wanting to stop it. And can you stop something that is outside the power of mere human beings? So climate change is something that we have an ambivalent relationship with as well. And with climate change, people are afraid, okay, climate change means the sea level is rising. And if you add, or you do the, you take your examples, your computer generated prognostication about if everything continues in this way, then, you know, most of the cities of the world that are by the oceans will be underwater. And so that's a very scary thing. And it's so science fiction that people think, you know, it cannot be, because if it is, it's sort of unacceptable. And so we close it off and say it's a conspiracy theory. So then we don't have to deal with it. But there are many things that we do have to deal with. Population. If you take population, the J curve of population, then we get to a point very soon when the Earth cannot sustain the number of people. And so people say, okay, well, then we'll have the sixth extinction, which people are protesting about. So all these type of things are there. And I think that a lot of the reason for this sort of ambivalent relationship with guarantees and certainty and what is next is because it is scary, and we don't really like not to be in control. Human beings feel that, you know, we are the superior race of among all the animals and everything. But what have we done? We have damaged the ocean very badly. We have damaged the rainforests and all of this environmental aspect. Then what we also have done is created a social situation which is really very difficult to sustain. And so people are scared. And if you take these prognostications looking at what's happening, then it takes you to a pretty negative place. And the idea that we are going into total negativity is unbearable. And so people say, okay, if it's unbearable, then it means it cannot be. And if it cannot be, then what is? And basically why I'm saying these things is because this is an attitude towards what's happening in the world based just on the laws of physics and what's going on just in the material world. But people don't really know the laws of spirituality. And in spiritual practice, we study about the laws of spirituality. That means we study about the laws of karma, which is very simply, whatever you do, there are equal and opposite consequences, and you have to bear those consequences. So it is the case that humanity has disregarded the laws of karma, disregarded the laws of nature. I'm thinking of the very famous speech of Chief Seattle, who said, you know, if you treat the world of nature like this, you will finish yourselves. Now, spirituality says the human spirit is indestructible. And that means it's impossible for the human race, individually and collectively, to stop existing. Einstein had told us that matter is indestructible, cannot be created or destroyed. So basically what I am saying is it's necessary for us to look at the combination of taking into consideration the laws of spirituality and the laws of matter in order for us to see where everything is going. And in the title, we saw that it says, okay, what are my next steps? So my next steps, I cannot do anything about climate change, although it has been shown that with the COVID-19 restrictions, the Earth started to get a little bit of breathing space, and there was a reduction of the amount of damaging activity. But COVID-19 will stop, and we will go, I don't know if we'll go back to normal, but we'll certainly go back to trying to take advantage of the fruits of the earth for our own survival, because the biggest problem in the world today is overpopulation. And whenever you get a situation of overpopulation in any species, something happens to drastically reduce that. It's the nature of the J-curves. So bringing in the laws of spirituality, I think, is very interesting. So my next steps means that I cannot take responsibility to get everybody else to think the same way as I'm thinking. But what do I think, knowing the laws of spirituality? And it brings me to the idea of the microcosm and the macrocosm. The microcosm is a single individual, and the macrocosm is the totality of the human race and our story. So the principle of microcosm and macrocosm shows us that whatever you do as an individual, it has an effect on the totality. In the approach to reality, or the approach to life that we think about in spiritual practice, we have another kind of sort of middle cosm, you can say, the microcosm being the individual, the macrocosm being the totality of humanity, and then this middle group, we say, or at least I say, that those people who are living according to the principles of spirituality are a force to be reckoned with, because it's not just one individual, it's quite a large number of individuals. There are many who are like this within the community of Brahma Kumaris, and then there are many others as well who are aware of the importance of what an individual or an informed group can do and the effect that they have. And what I feel is very interesting is that when you have a group of people of a certain number, and among Brahma Kumaris, there are more or less about 1 million. So that's a particular percentage, very small percentage, but it seems to me that there is some number, I don't know what that number is, but there is a number where a group of people taking into consideration laws of spirituality can tip the balance and create a situation where that which is tending towards falling apart and just dissipating totally is happening at the same time as something else is coming to take its place, which corresponds to laws and natural conditions that bring the earth and its inhabitants, including the animals and insects and birds and everything, and the human beings are the ones who make the difference. So if I can be one of those human beings, part of that tiny little percentage, which is doing work based on an understanding of the laws of spirituality and the laws of matter, then you have an energy which is recreating a balanced state in the world. And this must take into consideration that the earth is permanent and the human spirit is permanent. What science tells us is there was a big bang 14 billion years ago. And after another 14 billion years from now, there'll be another big bang. So one big bang made everything happen, and another big bang makes everything disappear. But that is limited. It doesn't take into consideration the continuity of matter and the continuity of spirit. So in the approach that I work with, we need to bear in mind that there are things, ways, trends, which continue slowly for a long, long time until it doesn't work anymore. And then there is drastic, massive change or a reset. And then it goes back to the factory settings, if you will. And then we can continue with humanity and the earth starting all over again. So we call this the Confluence Age. And the Confluence Age is a period of time where the laws of matter are understood to the most extreme, highest, and perfect level. And the laws of spirituality are also understood at that level. So when you have a situation like that, you have a possibility to bring everything to what we call its original condition. You see, because the idea of matter being permanent and the spirit being permanent cannot be clearly understood when you're looking at everything as if it is all temporary. And so we look at the world in cycles. There are cycles of human population, very big, very small, cycles of nature working in a very balanced way, and then everything getting really damaged and destroyed. And what we have seen in so many instances is how nature can put itself back to a good condition very quickly, as long as it's left alone. Someone did some research and said, okay, or they found that, okay, if you destroy all the insects in the world, then in 10 years, the planet will be no longer functional, just the insects. And what are we doing with pesticides? Taking out the insects. And if you lose all the human beings, then what happens is nature sets itself back to a perfect balanced state in the same amount of time. But what's really difficult for us human beings is to say, okay, if the problems that we are facing is ultimately overpopulation and overuse of the resources of the earth, then there is a big difficulty in terms of morality that, okay, who can be here and who should not be here? And so whenever you have anything like ethnic cleansing, where one set of people says, okay, we should be here and those other people should not be here, then you're using a principle of violence, and you're actually breaking some spiritual laws, because if you do that, then the consequences of that is that you will also get taken out. So it doesn't work. So what is the solution? Because every human spirit is permanent, every human spirit. And yet the population has been rising and rising and rising. I think in my lifetime, the world population has doubled, and it doubles in shorter and shorter periods of time till it reaches this extreme point where, as a mathematical principle of the J-curve, everything goes back to zero. And this is very scary for us. On the one hand, we want to have an opportunity to start again. And on the other hand, it's too scary to think of things like that because of the way we think about the value of people and what life is. So these situations, these realities, these calculations and scenarios put us in a very awkward situation. And of course, we have science fiction movies where we see a lot of these kinds of scenarios playing out to their end point. But let us go to the individual, because the individual, what will I, the individual spiritual being in a human body, what will I do? Bearing in mind the laws of society, the laws of spirituality, you know, how should I conduct myself? And to what extent should I think that I am responsible, and to what extent am I not responsible? Because there is such a thing as destiny. And destiny, most people, they say, yeah, I have a destiny. I don't know what it is, but I have one. And okay, so the idea of destiny is there. Things are, you know, written in advance, as it were. And then there's choice. What you do makes a difference. If you do the right thing by these laws, then there will be beneficial consequences. You violate these laws, there will be harmful consequences. So what I feel is practical is to try to bring into the narrative of the world this awareness that there are the laws of matter and there are also the laws of spirit. And if we can work using both of these together, then I think we'll get a solution to what is coming next. We will have faith that whatever is coming next, even if we don't have control over it, but it will be beneficial. And so it is completely uncertain, but the more you understand about the laws of spirituality, the more you can make informed choices. So it's a lot less uncertain. But what we also have to do is have enough internal power so that we can face the consequences of our uninformed actions once we start doing informed actions. So I'll stop there because I know that Marianne and Craig have some questions, and so we'll go from there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sister Denise. I'm also going to be joined by Craig, who is going to be spotlighted as well. And he is also a teacher living in South Florida. Hello, Craig. Hi. Thank you for joining us. So we do have some questions for you, Sister Denise. I'm going to start with one and then hand it off to Craig. But you talked a lot about these spiritual laws, the law of spirituality, the law of nature, and how basically our disregard of these laws has affected the world at the present time. I was wondering if you can tell us really a little bit about how we can keep these two laws very present in our individual lives, so that we make sure that we don't disregard them on a day-to-day basis. So how can we take this view of these laws that you've shown us in sort of in like a macro scale? How can we make it very personal? And how can we implement these laws and make sure that we're aware of their effect on us, others in the world, in our daily life?
Right. Well, I think that the first and foremost thing is, what is the identity of a human being? Identity is very crucial in this. So the laws of spirituality say that the identity of a human spirit is an entity, a unit of consciousness, which is fundamentally motivated by love and by personal power and peace and happiness and purity. And if we live according to that identity, then it's very natural for us to do things which maintain the balance. But I think the laws of science have told us that we are bodies and chemical processes, and they don't really look at the identity of a person in the same way at all. And so we have the pain-pleasure principle. And what this has done is said, okay, if you can enrich yourself, then that's good. But at what cost, you see? So at the cost of other people, at the cost of the environment, at the cost of your own health, you know? And so disregarding the spiritual laws means disregarding that humanity is the energy that can maintain the balance or break the balance. So if we can get a sense of our identity, then we also have to understand the laws of karma, that if we do an action, then there is an equal and opposite result. And the actions, if they're based in the original essential qualities of the human soul, purity, love, happiness, this kind of thing, then the way that we will interact with each other and the way that we interact with the earth maintains the balance. But what have we got in the world today as a result of disregarding these is a polarization of the races. You see, because the spirit law says the color of your body has nothing to do with your identity. And if you're male or female, that's also nothing to do with your identity. You know, that's an instrument for reproduction, which is necessary to keep the race going. But your identity is you're a spiritual being. And the way of looking at people as male, female, different races, different religion has created an artificial hierarchy. And when you assume that that artificial hierarchy is correct and natural, and you act on the basis of that, then you make everything go more and more out of balance. So bringing things back into balance means we need to really think about our identity and the way in which we look at people and the way in which we look at the relationship between people and the natural environment. And it comes down to the individual. So the individual has much more power than you think.
All right. Next question. It seems like what it's come down to is we're out of balance as a society, as a world family. And what seems to be a negative thing that we see, climate change and whatever's happening in the world, that all the things you've just mentioned is just nature trying to get rebalanced. So that is some certainty right there. So I was thinking that let's have our own, let's experiment with our own example of the upside of uncertainty. You don't know the questions I'm going to ask.
Right.
Will that uncertainty, the unknown, encourage the intellect to trust my insight or in-knowing to discover an answer outside the realm of the familiarity of the concrete? I'll say a word or phrase, and you can just allow your intuition to respond.
Absolutely, yeah. And I have no problem with that because I have a lot of faith in the intuition, and I am not worried about uncertainty. Everything is uncertain, so it's normal for there to be uncertainty. Yeah.
First word, trust.
Happiness.
A phrase, strip away what you don't need in advance.
Lightness.
Surrender.
Freedom.
Ambition.
Success.
Uncertainty.
Easygoing.
Silence.
Stillness.
Just like going on to silence him, that just like the relationship that you heard the story of the relationship between leaves and the spaces, is there likewise a relationship the same way with thoughts and silence?
When thoughts are pure, it creates harmony, and we call that harmony silence, which is living as opposed to dead silence.
The company of my own thoughts is blank.
Sweet.
So we've had this process, for those who don't know, but a little retreat on silence this weekend. And in order to be silent, I have to really value my own company. I have to find that pleasure principle in my own company. In your own personal experience, has the pandemic and the resulting lockdown provided an opportunity to be happier?
What I found, I was in San Francisco for the first 4 months of the lockdown, and in a house which was quite big and had 5 people living there. And we stayed inside, and that was fine by me. And we were allowed to go out, and I was right next to the Golden Gate Park, so I would go out. And actually, it made hardly any difference to me because my lifestyle is, in a way, quite solitary. And I'm a person who has a very rich inner life. And so it really didn't make any difference. And okay, I normally travel a great deal, so traveling was curtailed substantially, fine. So my training, I think, in spirituality provides me with this adjustability that if things are like this, okay, if there's food, good. If there isn't food, we find another way, because there's always ways around things. So you become creative and adjusting, and it's fine.
That sounds like trust to me.
But I think also the practice of living according to, trying to make all the thoughts, words, and actions pure karma means that whatever I do on that basis, whatever happens, it will be okay. I'm not doing something which is going to put me in trouble. I'm doing something which is going to put me in some situation, whatever it is, it'll be okay.
I've heard you say before that the language of silence has nothing to do with words, but it relies more on resonance and vibration. Is intuition, or how is intuition related to this resonance or vibration that you have mentioned?
Well, if we go back to the idea of the soul being a resonance itself, it's conscious, it's resonating, and its resonance is pure and beautiful and harmonious. And you stay in that state, you are creating an influence, like very beautiful music. And it causes people and matter and everything to just come into like harmony. They just, or you could say almost it reverses the effect of entropy.
How do you know this? How does it come to you? How do you figure it out as it happens? Like, there's no roadmap necessarily. How, you're talking about the macrocosm is one thing, but I'm a microcosm, and I've got to be whole myself. How do I find out these things?
I think one part of it is I've always been like that since childhood. And another is that I meditate. And so in meditation, we explore the vibrations of the mind and the soul and the being. And, one thing that you can also add to the mix is that when you bring yourself to a very, very pure resonance, it's like an opera singer who breaks a glass with her music, her tone. And so when you bring into the mix this very pure vibration, you are intensifying the polarization, and something which is sort of doesn't belong, or which is harmful or damaging, it'll break.
Is it because of my own unnecessary noise, things that I'm listening to, that I'm not relating to this resonance that's going on all the time? And all these things that nature is doing is ways of reminding me to pay attention.
I was looking at a documentary yesterday about a man in South Africa who was like a high-end media guy and in advertising and things like that. And his life got to a point where he just didn't feel good. He just wanted to give up everything, and he didn't know what and why, and everything was just not okay for him. And he decided that the only way he could get through this was to go into the ocean. He was living in the Western Cape, which is where the Atlantic and Pacific come together. And so he would go without oxygen bottles, but just with a snorkel, and he would go deep. And after a couple of months of doing this every day, he met an octopus. And an octopus is really one of the most intelligent creatures there is. But this octopus is very sensitive, and so just watching how this man came into this relationship with this octopus, and the octopus, after some time, put out one of his tentacles and held the hand of the man, and then started to sit on his chest, and they created this relationship, which was only possible if the man would really sort of enter octopus world, where everything is flowing and gentle and all of this. The way we normally think of the natural world is they're all trying to eat each other. And so it gives us the validation to behave in a violent way, gratuitously violent. And this really has to be questioned. Why do we have to be gratuitously violent against each other or against nature? Because this creates this horrible dissonance and suffering. And then when it reaches a certain point, this is also a spiritual law. When something reaches the maximum, it becomes the opposite. And I think that there are situations, circumstances in this world where on many levels, things are reaching the maximum. And so they're kind of turning, doing a 180 and becoming the opposite. And that is an amazing thing that we are living through, and to be aware of it and to be put oneself into it and decide. You have to decide which end you want to be on. Do you want to be on the end of being violent, or do you want to be on the end of making this resonance? And it's very subtle and very still, very quiet. Can you hear an octopus? thinking? I don't think so. But it's all about thought and feeling, and in the nature, people are the natural, the animals and everything are very sensitive to thought, and people just don't get it. They really do not think that animals can think and feel.
We have a hard enough time understanding one another.
Craig, I have a quick question.
Go
for
ahead,
Sister
please
Denise.
do.
Thank you. So in the title of the program, the keywords were, I think, uncertainty and upside, I think were the keywords. I think that the word that really actually kind of stood out for me was actually steps. I think it has a connotation of process and maybe even company and maybe even courage. So I was curious as to maybe what have been some of the significant steps I think that you have taken in your life that have brought you to where you are, and maybe what are some of the steps that we can take?
I think to me it's all about risk. When I started meditating with the Brahma Kumaris, it was very unusual to do something like that. Now it's pretty much mainstream, but at that time, it's like you're cuckoo. Something wrong with you. You're like way off track, and so you have to, in many ways, take risks to do the thing, which I think we were talking earlier about intuition, to do the thing that corresponds to your intuition. And in my case, a lot of the things I do according to my intuition are not at all what other people would think is a good idea. And so they try and stop you, and they try and ridicule you, and they try and prove that it's not working. But when you start doing these kinds of things over a long period of time, and in my introduction, you said that I've been doing this 45 years, so since youth, and just to see how much good relationships I have, how much whatever I need comes to me, how much, like even if I get sick, which I was earlier today, you just go into that resonance and you pass through it, and it finishes. So you're really operating in a different way from everybody else, but eventually they kind of see that, what are you doing? They ask you, what are you doing? How is it that your life is so kind of perfect and so free? See, because for me, freedom is really important. And somehow by following the principles that I've been studying, and by continuously meditating and going through all the ups and downs and everything, but just sticking to this principle of this resonance and amplifying the resonance, it's like you make a decision to take a risk, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, that's the risk, but it is working out really well.
We agree. So this risk, the equation is the risk over a long period of time. The risk, is it something that you do? Is it an external risk? Are we taking any personal internal risks as well?
You are taking external and internal risks, because you see, to me, a very important principle is to be true to yourself. And when you want to be true to yourself in further and further levels and degrees, you encounter people who are not true to themselves in certain areas, and then they will consider that you are disturbing them because you make them look bad or something like this, you know. So you have to be very quiet and very not out there, just quietly doing what it is that you do, what you know is like the right thing. And it's all based on genuine love. And you have genuine love, and it disturbs people because it conflicts with their self-interest. Then you just have to keep going anyway, and they might not like you, but after a while they will they'll like you again or whatever. But you're not doing it based on everybody has to approve of me and like me and that. But I think if you can figure out this right resonance and right action and right attitude and this type of thing, you're going to arrive at something very harmonious, and that's a very high value, you see.
So in spite of things seemingly getting worse in the world, I can actually get better at the same time. So it's like that movie from years ago, The Dark Crystal. Remember that one?
Yeah.
That what happens on one side, the opposite is also happening, and it works together in this beautiful interplay. So in the same way that climate change is taking place and all the other things that you mentioned are taking place, but as individuals, each microcosm, we're doing the same thing. It sounds to me like you're talking about a critical mass of something of that. And how would you explain that?
Well, you reach a point where the amount of energy that you're putting out, which is very coherent and held together, and what's around you is falling apart. So something that's falling apart doesn't have power in comparison with something that's coherent. And what you saw in The Dark Crystal, which I always like, that last scene when the extreme positive and the extreme negative fused, and out of that you got something new. And I think that it's really a good analogy for what's going on here. You know, because we have to be part of that force, which is creative, which is integrative, which is giving a life to everything. And then whatever is dying, you have to just allow it to pass through its processes and come to new life. Another analogy is the the butterfly who is coming out of the cocoon. That caterpillar is just a what do you call it? A consumer. A caterpillar just eats and eats and eats until there's nothing else, and then he just goes quiet, and this change takes place. And it's a big struggle for this this change that happens inside the cocoon, where you have the imaginal cells operating and getting destroyed and all of this. But you see, in nature, there are just so many examples of how the process of renewing through struggle and renewing through pain, renewing where something new comes and something old falls away, gets destroyed. And every autumn the leaves fall down, and the winter is important, and then there's spring, and it keeps coming, and it's regular. And I don't know whether there will be one day no more spring. There might well be no more spring, but overall this is a natural rhythm of the world. And like if I take you back to the ocean, the coral reefs are bleaching because of 1 degree of raising the temperature 1 degree, you see. And it's like time for that to happen. And then it will reset itself again. But people need to trust that it can go through this destructive condition, and then it can come alive again. But it has to reach a kind of crisis, and after crisis comes renewal. This is also a principle, you know.
Sister Denise, we're coming up at our hour. Of course, we wish we could spend hours with you. You know, I think my sense and what I'm feeling now at this time, past few months, is that there's a deep desire for people to transcend these negative and dark forces and times that you're talking about. If you could give everybody out there, or people specifically, maybe they're having a challenging time, if you could convey a message to them, what would that message be? If you had a big, you know, speakerphone and you could make everybody hear you,
Well,
what would that be?
normally what happens when people are faced with very, very big challenges is fight, flight, or freeze. And we do that. You could be the fight type, the flight type, or the freeze type. People fit in these categories. And what we have to do is face. Like they say, the only way out is through. We have to not run away. We have to not freeze over. We have to not fight it. We have to move through it. And in my practice, when I encounter quite extreme, you know, opposing forces, it will definitely trigger, oh, you've got to fight, you've got to flight, or you've got to freeze. And I say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to be with it. I'm going to face it. I'm going to move through it. And that's my policy. And I think that that is a good one that will help.
Thank you so much, sister. Thank you for what you do for everyone. And I thank you myself. As a matter of fact, I'll give a little shout out to you, is that what I'm really enjoying is watching this series, Decoding the Gita.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That I would recommend that to anyone, but make sure you have a lot of time, because there's 65 episodes. I'm at number 40 right now, and I find it very, not just entertaining, but also educational and applicable to the times that we live in. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and that people can find on rajayoga.tv. That's where you can find it.
Thank you. Maybe we can post that in the chat. Sister Denise, we do want to leave with a few minutes special meditation commentary from you. We thank you so much for being here. We know that you were fighting a bit of a headache this morning, and so we're extra thankful that you're here with us and doing well. And thanks to Greg for helping me out with this incredible interview.
So for Denise, yeah.
Thank you, Denise. We're gonna just move on, and we're gonna do a little commentary with Sister Denise, and then you know, take it from there in terms of leading. So thank you again, and Om Shanti.
Thank you. So meditation means to just take a few moments to turn within. Slowly, slowly, let yourself be in your inner world. The inner world, you feel close to your essence. The mind feels what you are. A pure, being of light. My identity. I am light. I am focused on my essence. Quiet, steady, and stable. I return to my origins, a still, beautiful, harmonious being of light. Whatever is going on in the drama of the world, I just allow it to be what it is. The ups and downs, successes and failures. I myself am independent of these pairs of opposites. My resonance amplifies when I'm focused on my being. The subtle inner world gives me access to the higher power, the source of light and love. I connect with that source. The energy streams into my being. My light increases. My resonance becomes more pure. Stream of energy fills me and spreads beyond me, filling the atmosphere with harmony, peace, beauty. I am still and quiet while the energy moves through me and beyond. I return back to the day-to-day state of being. Om Shanti. Thank you.